You like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
the People's Channel?
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, a new record has been reached when it comes to the not-so-small Burt crossings. And as I tell you often, ladies and gents, we live in a complete clown world, because you'll be familiar with the flagship Labour policy of one in, one out. Well, we've sent one fella back to France. You won't believe it. He's just got back on a not-so-small Burt and come straight back again. I kid you not. Meanwhile, another migrant stands accused of sexually assaulting a primary school child. Cue massive unrest. I will take you live to Ireland to look at that. And speaking of Clanwell, the grooming gang inquiry is now descended into even more of a farce, if that was possible. I'll have the very latest on that with Charlie Peters. And Nigel Farage, he has gone on strike from PMQs. Let's take a look at that. And it's all kicking off because a Tory MP has called for deportations. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Keeping me company, my panel tonight, the pollster and academic Matt Goodwin and the Lib Dem councillor Carl Cashman. But before we get stuck in, here is your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you very much. The top stories. The King and Queen have landed in Rome for their state visit to meet Pope Leo as part of the 2025 Jubilee year. King Charles and Pope Leo are to become the first British monarch and pontiff to pray together at a church service since the Reformation in the 16th century. This historic moment will be in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. The visit celebrates unity and hope, marking a historic moment for both the Church of England and the Catholic Church. The Prime Minister has come under fire after 4 survivors quit the government's grooming gangs inquiry, accusing officials of creating a toxic environment and watering it down. At Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch accused the government of a cover-up, saying survivors feel dismissed and ignored.
They voted against the national inquiry 3 times, so the victims don't believe them. They can say no as much as they like. It is on the record. They don't like it, but it's true. Now, one of the victims has quit. They believe that the inquiry will downplay the racial and religious motivations behind their abuse. Aren't the victims right when they call it a cover-up?
But Sir Keir Starmer hit back, insisting the inquiry will not be watered down and will examine the ethnicity and religion of offenders in full.
Survivors have been ignored for many years, including by the state that, of course, is supposed to protect them. We owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Meanwhile, another candidate to chair the grooming gangs inquiry has pulled out of the process, telling the Home Secretary the appointment process has been defined more by the vested interests of some, as well as political opportunism and point scoring. Jim Gamble was one of two people named in reports as a potential option to lead the inquiry. Another, Annie Hudson, withdrew yesterday. The Home Office says it's disappointed that both have pulled out. GB News can confirm the number of migrants crossing the Channel has already surpassed the total for the whole of last year. 2 Border Force vessels arrived in Dover this afternoon, carrying around 150 people, taking this year's total to 36,886. Senior security sources say it's deeply concerning for ministers, with more than 2 months still left in the year. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood reacted to the latest figures, saying the previous government left our borders in crisis and we're still living with the consequences. These figures are shameful. The British people deserve better. A migrant sent to France under the government's new one-in, one-out scheme has returned to the UK by small boat, saying he feared for his life in France. The man, now in immigration detention, claims he was trafficked and abused by smugglers and says he didn't feel safe after being sent back. Human rights groups say others removed under the scheme have also faced violence and exploitation, but the Home Office insists anyone who re-enters the UK illegally will be removed. A passport-forging criminal gang and firm of financiers have been hit with sanctions in a government crackdown on groups accused of propping up the people smuggling trade. The Balkan-based network is now banned from travelling to the UK and cut off from its finances. Sir Keir Starmer says it's another warning that gangs who trade in human suffering will face the full force of the UK's sanction regime. Mohammed Umar Khan has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of teenager Harvey Wilgoose at their school. The 15-year-old stabbed Harvey in the heart with a hunting knife at All Saints Catholic High School in February. The jury, in a month-long trial, was told that 15-year-old Harvey was attacked following a confrontation between the pair during a lesson earlier that day. While investigating the murder, police found photographs of Khan posing with hunting-style knives and a hammer. His internet search history included terms such as zombie killer knife. That's what the judge said earlier today. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to each and every single one of you. My name's Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got the pollster, academic, and of course GB News presenter Matt Goodwin. Alongside him, I've got the Lib Dem councillor Carl Cashman. Good evening, gents. You're very welcome tonight. As of course, are each and every single one of you. What's on your mind tonight? Join the conversation in all the usual ways. We have so much that we need to discuss. This absolute farcical one-in, one-out. We sent some fella back to France the other day. Ladies and gents, he got back on a not-so-small boat and came back again. You couldn't even make this up, and I'm not even kidding you. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Big, massive news of the day, though. You've got to start your 6 o'clock news with this. My little boy, he had his first ever costume competition at school today, and he won. There you go. I do just want to press pause just to take a moment of glory. Mother of the Year, that's what I say. It's his first ever one, and I'm really proud of myself. But anyway, moving on to much, much more serious matters. The grooming gang situation. This inquiry, we followed this, ladies and gents. We know now it has descended into an absolute farce. And just when you thought that farce couldn't get any worse, today it did. Charlie Peters, I've got to give you credit here. You are the man that's really been pushing, driving this story, championing the stories of these girls and the fight for their justice. More twists and turns today. Tell the viewers more.
Well, now both of the candidates, the prospective candidates for chair, have officially withdrawn. So Annie Hudson, who was a social worker, she withdrew before meeting the panel of survivors yesterday. But then today, Jim Gamble, who was actually interviewed by 2 separate panels yesterday, he's withdrawn today. Former senior police officer, although he does tell GB News this afternoon that he left being a police officer to challenge the police. This is not like typical former coppers. But he's withdrawn, and that means that there's no known prospective chairs of this national inquiry at a time when it's in grave crisis, because we've had 4 survivors quit. And the most recent one to leave, Jessica said last night that she didn't have trust in the process. A lot of these survivors have spoken about the fear of silencing. We know that they've not been allowed to talk about the process with each other or their families. One survivor told me it was stricter than being on a jury. And also, those two prospective chairs, they had to submit their questions before they met them. Jim Gamble, speaking to us earlier this afternoon, he said that that was abhorrent.
Indeed.
I was totally unaware that they had to have their questions, you know, proofed by someone. And in fact, I totally, I find that abhorrent. That shouldn't happen. These are people who are reflecting their lived experience. As I said to them at the time, if I had been successful, the first thing I would want to do is give them the opportunity to speak to me in groups, if that's more comfortable.
Some survivors want a judge to replace the two people who are now out of the running. Others looked to Jim Gamble as being a great prospective chair, but he said there now needs to be a pause to regain the trust of survivors, to re-engage them properly, and also to take what he described as a toxic environment and the political point scoring out of the conversation.
Do you think there is the political will here to genuinely get to the bottom of this?
Absolutely. I mean, we know there is now widespread strong language on this issue, but it now takes strong action. A lot of concerns we're hearing from survivors is, of course, this statement that Jess Phillips made in the Commons yesterday, referring to misinformation being spread on this topic about widening the remit. And the reason why a lot of the survivors aren't engaging anymore is because they feel as though that was an attack on them, that their concerns about an expansion of the scope, because they were sent a letter asking them if they wanted a broader scope, they're saying, you know, is the safeguarding minister saying that we're lying? So those are very difficult concerns for the government to overcome, but I do think that they'll be seeking to re-engage them, and I'll probably take Jim's advice. Take a pause on this, reassess how this panel is working. How can they get their trust? Because that's going to be absolutely crucial as they search for a new chair. Will it be a judge? Will it be a former copper? We just don't know at this stage, because as it stands, there are no named prospective chairs in the running.
Dear me, ladies and gents, what do you make to all of this at home? Let me know your thoughts. But Matt Goodwin, what do you reckon?
Well, I think it's pretty clear the Labour government, Keir Starmer, Jess Phillips, are not fit to be presiding over this national inquiry into the rape gangs. This is, after all, the Labour Party that denied this scandal for 30 years, called anybody who talked about it a racist and Islamophobe, was then doing all it could earlier this year to avoid committing to a national inquiry, and now it has finally committed to that inquiry. It's doing everything it possibly can, it seems, to lose the trust, to lose the confidence of the victims and their families. I just want to read you one thing that Marlon West, who is the father of Scarlett, who was raped by more than 60 men. This is what he has said. He's called for Jess Phillips to resign. He said, Jess Phillips has lost any kind of faith from the public and, more importantly, with survivors and families. This is a Labour government, Michelle, that does not have the confidence of the most important people of all, which is the girls who were raped and abused by Pakistani Muslim rape gangs and their families.
What an absolute mess. Carl, what do you make to it all?
Yeah, well, Michelle, I'm from a place where, you know, we haven't had much trust in public institutions with what happened with Hillsborough and other issues. So, you know, we've called for an inquiry over that for a very long time and eventually got it. And now we've got the Hillsborough law. You know, it looked like the Labour government were going to drag its heels over that. Luckily, they didn't, and we've now got it. But I understand why people are sceptical of this government when it comes to the grooming gangs inquiry, because they've had other inquiries before that haven't revealed much truth. And for me, the main issue that we need to think about here is the actual victims, because in all of this, regardless of who's on the panel, who's not on the panel, who's chairing it or not, the victims deserve justice, and this deserves to be, you know, the best antiseptic is light, and we need to shine some light on this. The only thing I would stress as well is that I think it's absolutely outrageous of the Tories to be jumping on this issue now when they presided over years and years of this never coming to light.
I think Cal makes an interesting point there. And when I watched the interview with Jim Gamble earlier on, one of the things that he was highlighting, as you just pointed out as well, Charlie, is the political point scoring now, that people are leveraging this in order to gain kudos for themselves and whatever. It's a very strange dynamic that the Tories find themselves in right now, because they are pushing hard. But what did they do?
Well, lots of the Tories, when this sort of re-emerged in January as a major political issue, in part because of our reporting from Oldham, but also, let's be frank, Elon Musk started retweeting everything we were doing, which was very helpful to get the story out. A lot of the Tories who were most engaged with our coverage in January had said nothing 2 years ago when we were in Rochdale with Suella Braverman as she launched a grooming gangs task force. She explicitly made reference to ethnicity on that day, and very few Tories, I couldn't find any senior Tories, who were willing to back her up when she did that. I now find plenty of Labour ministers, by contrast, who are speaking in way stronger terms now than Tories were 2 years ago. Now, Sir Keir Starmer accused people of jumping on a far-right bandwagon in January, but I think there is a case to be made that a lot of politicians are only engaging with this now it's safe politically and now that it's popular. When it was difficult and people like Suella Braverman were making these plans, launching these task force and engaging with survivors and us, people were much more hesitant to engage.
I just want to add one thing to that. In 2011, I stood next to Nigel Farage in Oldham as he unveiled what were then billboards for the UK Independence Party talking about the rape gang scandal. It should also be remembered that Reform were advocating ahead of the last election the deportation of anybody convicted of rape gang activity who holds dual nationality, British and Pakistani. And I think, you know, there's a point about, you know, playing politics with this, but there's also the reality that, you know, perhaps making a political point, the one political party in British politics that has consistently advocated for the victims of this scandal and put forward a very tough response is also the party that is not one of the two big vehicles in Westminster.
Well, it won't surprise you to learn, of course, it was PMQs this afternoon. Kemi Badenoch, she basically used most of her questions to tackle this issue, and this is what Keir Starmer had to say about the issue there.
I do acknowledge that in recent days some members, including Fiona, have decided to step away from the panel. I say this, Mr Speaker, should they wish to return, the door will always be open. But even if they do not, we owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down.
But the million-dollar question is, ladies and gents, do you believe that? Because you can sit there and you can say, you know what, it's not going to be watered down, it's not going to be widened, we won't shy away from questions of ethnicity and religion or whatever it is. But the million-dollar question, you at home, you, the voters, the British public, do you believe what you hear? Many of you are getting in touch tonight. Laura says, Michelle, I feel that Labour are going to try and make this as difficult as possible because many of these crimes look likely to have happened in Labour-run constituency. Michael says, this is just flip-flopping around. What needs to happen now is to get an outside judge in. This point about the judge, lots of viewers, Charlie, are messaging in saying get a judge. But actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Baroness Casey, didn't she actually say she didn't think a judge-led inquiry was the right way to progress?
That's right, and the Prime Minister made that argument again in the House today, saying for two reasons. One, a judge would extend the time. Casey wants this to be a time-limited 3-year review, and of course the government agrees with that as well. She also argued that because one of the 12 recommendations she made in June wasn't just about this civilian, as it were, inquiry, the state inquiry, but also a national police investigation. She thinks that having a judge could disrupt live criminal investigations. However, speaking to lots of senior lawyers and solicitors who work in child abuse compensation and claims, and also the prosecution of abusers, a lot of them say that actually they're not convinced by that analysis. They do think that a judge or a senior lawyer, like a KC barrister who prosecutes gangs, could be useful because they could process the deeply complex information at play. But also, Michelle, you do speak to some survivors who say they would like an ex-police officer because judges criminalise them as well.
So Andy, on Twitter, he's got in touch and said, and I can tell you, Andy, this gets echoed all the time, every time I discuss this topic. He says, Maggie Oliver should be the chair, but hasn't she said that she doesn't want to be?
Well, it's about who's capable of doing the role. Maggie Oliver does an amazing job running a charity, of course, but managing statutory powers and processing a specific investigation. A lot of people would say that a barrister, a judge, a very senior former investigator, those sort of roles they're looking at. What people like Maggie Oliver can do, heroes to so many victims, is advocate for them, provide information that the state has lost. Would Maggie Oliver be willing to spend years going through fighting all these barristers and advocating in this way? I'm not so sure. And would that have the support of the state? Definitely not. Maggie Oliver tells it as it is.
Well, I want you to ponder what you've just been hearing over the break. I shall bring you back into the conversation when I return. But the million-dollar question that I'm going to pose to you, do you have faith that this inquiry is actually going to get off the ground in a timely manner and do what they promise it will do on the tin? I'll see you in a few minutes.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Matt Goodwin and Carl Cashman. Lots of you getting in touch about the absolute farce that now seems to be the grooming gang inquiry. Can you imagine how you must feel if you were a victim? Because everyone either trying to get political capital out of it. It must be so upsetting and frustrating. Barbara says, Michelle, I think that this whole thing will be stalled to drag it out longer so that it doesn't actually have any real effect until after the general election. People, Barbara suggesting that actually the locations and who is involved in some of this stuff might negatively impact various different different parties, I shall leave them to your imagination, in the general election. I'll tell you what will negatively impact parties at the general election, the absolute state of these not-so-small Burt crossings. You all know by now that the Labour Party's flagship policy is the so-called one-in, one-out scheme. Well, you won't believe it, ladies and gents, because now it's become apparent that one migrant that we sent back to France, I kid you not, he's got back on a not-so-small Burt and come back again. Simultaneously today, it's transpired that the number of channel crossings has surpassed the total number for the whole of last year. Sit down. We're at nearly 37,000 people. What a joke. Matt Goodwin.
It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, it's even worse if you look at the numbers since 2018. Nearly 200,000 illegal migrants entering this country illegally. If the average continues, Michelle, by the time we get to that next general election, another 180,000 illegal migrants will enter Britain, which means at that general election, we will be saying to voters, taxpayers, the British citizens, we will be saying that about 400,000 illegal migrants have entered this country since 2018 alone. A lot more people, by the way, than we have in the British Armed Forces. And don't forget, Keir Starmer was the guy who said every previous plan to control the borders was a gimmick. Rwanda was a gimmick. Remember that? This plan he's got, one in, one out, you know, this game of ping pong is the biggest gimmick of all. It is not working. All of the numbers are up 50% this year. The first half of this year, the small boat numbers are up 50%. Labour is not smashing the gangs. Labour is smashing what remains of our border security, which is not much at all. People out there, lastly, absolutely right to feel furious and angry about this. This is how the social contract breaks down, when you allow hundreds of thousands of unvetted illegal migrants into the country, putting our people at risk.
I'm going to take you live after the break, perhaps to Ireland. You want to see what's happening there. But before I do that, Carl, your thoughts?
Yeah, so it is a farce. That's probably the best word that you can use for it, really. It's kind of like a cartoon sketch in many ways, isn't it? A bit of a Tom and Jerry, although I wouldn't say that Keir Starmer was as cunning as Tom, and that's not very cunning, to be perfectly honest. But look, you know, one in, one out. If you've got the same guy coming back in, I think everyone in the country will be looking at this and thinking, what is this Labour government doing and what are its priorities? Because it's certainly not tackling the gangs. You know, it's not got any credible plan. And actually, what we need to be looking at is processing people who are here legally, properly and faster so that they can actually work. But people who are here illegally, we need to make sure that they're kicked out.
So the answer to you is more safe and legal routes, processing people who get to this country quicker, which basically means approving them, allowing them to stay, allowing them to work. How is that going to resolve the migration crisis? That's going to send a big, loud message to everybody across Africa and Asia that if you get to the UK, you'll be able to stay in the UK. Now, I don't remember voting for that. I don't remember that being in any party manifesto, but that is exactly what's happening, and that is why people are so angry.
Well, not at all, Matt, because if you look at the migration to this country over the course of the last few years since Brexit, what you'll find is that many EU nationals have left this country to go back to the European Union.
No, I understand that.
And many African nationals and from elsewhere in the Middle East and other places have come into this country. So what you will actually do is make it more appealing for legitimate people to come to this country and for illegal migrants not to come to this country.
Well, that's clearly not working. We have the worst of both worlds at the moment. We have a legal mass immigration policy which is making us poorer because it's bringing in low-wage, low-skill, non-European migrants who we now know from the Office of Budget Responsibility and elsewhere are a net fiscal cost to the people watching this television show. And we've got masses of illegal migration, which is not being put off by our very generous welfare system, by our ridiculous one-in, one-out policy, and a political class in Westminster that, let's be frank, isn't really interested in defending or protecting the British people anymore. And there's no answer. There's no answer from the Lib Dems. There's no answer from Labour. There's certainly no answer from the open border fanatics in the Green Party. The only party I can see that's actually getting real about this is Reform. Leave the ECHR, repeal the Human Rights Act, detain and deport.
That's certainly not what we should be doing, trampling over people's rights. And there's certainly
what about the rights of the British people?
There's certainly no answer from Reform on this because these are Farage boats, essentially.
That's ridiculous.
Because ever since Brexit,
absolutely,
why has there been a massive amount amount of boats coming over to this country since Brexit is because exactly what I've just said before. So the low-wage, low-skilled workers are coming here because we've sent people back from the European Union, because we've made this country not a desirable place to come for them anymore. And what would your proposal be for the NHS? So the people that come here and work in our NHS and keep this country going, what would your proposal be?
I'll give you my... Let's just deal with this head on, because this is important, the NHS, right? Do you know what percentage of all Boris Wave visas, all the people, millions of people that came into this country since 2021, do you know what percentage of those visas went to NHS doctors, went to people working in the NHS?
Sure, you'll tell me.
Yeah, I will. 0.7%. Do you know how to fix the NHS? You don't have mass immigration. You figure out, why is it that half of all British-trained doctors in this country can't get jobs in the NHS? Why is it that 18,000 British kids who wanted to go to medical schools, who wanted to actually become doctors, were rejected by medical schools? Why is that, Carl? The answer is they're too expensive. Our institutions would rather import less well-qualified doctors, less well-qualified medical professionals from the third world, who, by the way, we are simultaneously being asked to give £15 billion a year to in foreign aid, while taking their doctors and taking their medical professionals, which is completely absurd, while British kids here are not able to be trained to become doctors. What we need, if you want to fix the NHS, is a principle of national preference put into this country. We put British kids first. We put British-trained doctors first. We actually value our citizens and we put them to work in the NHS, because what you're proposing is mass, endless immigration, which gives us more of this managed decline that we're living with at the moment.
But let's separate two of those things out for a moment, because the first part of that I actually agree with, which is that if you are trained as a doctor in this country, you should have the opportunity to become a doctor in this country. But we're not opening our borders up to just anyone to come in here and be a doctor who is less skilled than people in this country.
That's exactly what the evidence shows.
That is absolutely not true.
They take a qualification called the PLAB.
I've spoken to plenty myself who say that is not.
Virtually every member of my family works in the NHS. Doctors and medical professionals from outside of the UK take something called the PLAB examination, the qualification, which is the equivalent, essentially, of what UK-trained doctors take. There are studies in the British Medical Journal and elsewhere that show that trains them to a lower standard than their UK equivalents. So we are taking people from the third world, developing nations, who should stay there and help their own people and help their countries, and we're ushering them into the NHS and we're putting British patients at risk. Now, the Lib Dems, given that you talk a lot about ethics and morality, why aren't you on this show saying, you know what, it is right that we support those countries by keeping people in those countries. It is right that we secure our borders here in the UK, because if we don't, public support for welfare will collapse, public support for the common good will collapse. Why aren't Liberals and Lib Dems ever making that argument?
Well, I suppose the argument that you're talking about there, Matt, to keep doctors in those countries, I would like to hear how you would do that, because if you haven't got foreign aid in order to do that, how do you keep doctors in those countries? The thing that we need to do is incentivise doctors in these countries, people who go to university to become doctors and then to be trained up in the NHS and to become, the consultants of the future. I think, Reform's plan of actually what
leave the European Convention on Human Rights, repeal Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, detain and deport.
You want to trample over people's rights in order to deport people. That's fine if you've got someone...
That's not trampling over people's rights.
That's fine if you've got someone that you believe in to be Prime Minister. But what about the Prime Minister after that and the Prime Minister after that? You can't trample over people's fundamental rights.
What many European nations are currently talking about, OK? I was in the European Parliament 2 weeks ago. Everybody now accepts the post-1945 refugee conventions are no longer working. The international treaties are no longer working. We need to revise all of them. Reform actually have had the courage, the guts and the intellect to stand up and say this isn't working for British people anymore. And by the way, while we're at it, we shouldn't be spending £10 billion on welfare benefits for people who aren't British, which is another statistic that came up this week. That is obscene to me, that during the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War, we are forcing British people to pay £10 billion a year on welfare benefits for people who aren't even British. Reform are the only party that have said openly, we will restrict welfare benefits to British people. That is the right thing to do, the ethical thing to do. The reason you won't do that is because Liberals, Lib Dems, believe in universal rights. You think everybody is the same as everybody else and every culture is just as impressive as every other culture, and that simply isn't true. So that is why we're in this managed decline. That is why the social contract is collapsing.
So you're saying that not everyone has the same fundamental rights as other people?
I'm saying nation-states should put the tax-paying, hard-working, law-abiding majority first.
That's not what you said in that statement, though.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's not at all.
That's
You just
exactly
said that
what I'm
not
saying.
everyone is
Nation-states
equal.
should prioritise national citizens.
Well, yeah, I mean, is that a controversial statement? That actually, when it comes to fundamental rights, for example, to access the benefit system in this country, everyone shouldn't always be equal? No. A British citizen should have priority access to the British welfare state over and above non-UK nationals. That's not controversial, is it?
That's not what Matt's saying, though. He's saying fundamentally that people aren't the same or equal under the eyes of God.
I don't think all cultures are equal, no. And I think you can see that, for example, in the rates of unemployment and social housing reliance among Somalis in the UK. They just come from a fundamentally different culture to ours.
Well, there you go. What do you make to what you're hearing, ladies and gents? Join the conversation in all the usual ways. After the break, I want to take you live to Ireland. It has all been kicking off there. Dougie Beattie will tell us more.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Bad news if you're off on holiday for the half-term period. Northern parts of Europe, there's still plenty of unsettled weather. Some heavy rain, thunderstorms and also some strong gusty winds at times. Now through Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal, largely settled, though there could be some showers in places. The main area of the unsettled weather are going to be in parts of France, Germany, also Italy and parts of Greece, where we could see some quite intense showers, some thunderstorms and some strong gusty winds, particularly across France. More sunshine around on Friday before a return of the showers over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Storm Benjamin has been named by Meteo France, bringing a spell of wet and windy weather to us here in the UK, with some Met Office warnings issued for both wind and rain. Here's the storm here, slowly skirting its way into the southwest through the course of the evening, then moving its way eastwards through the course of the night. It's set to bring some very heavy downpours through Wednesday evening, all the way through into Thursday. This rain could be quite persistent at times. It's likely we'll see some localised flooding associated with this. It's not only going to be wet, but it's also going to be windy, particularly around east and southeastern coasts and eventually through the morning around western coasts of Wales and southwest England. A chance we could see wind speeds between 50 to 60 miles per hour around exposed coast, possibly even slightly higher. So it's likely to be quite impactful as we head through into Thursday. Make sure this afternoon to tie down any loose items you might have floating around in the garden. A little bit brighter across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, though there are going to be plenty of showers. Some clearer skies across western Scotland, but fairly breezy here, and it is set to feel rather chilly through Thursday morning too. But overall, it is going to be a very unsettled picture. The outbreaks of rain are set to linger through much of eastern England through the course of the day. Still very gusty, some quite brisk northerly winds really adding on to the chill as we head through into Thursday. The best of the brightness likely across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, but still quite breezy with some showers feeding through here. Feeling much chillier, highs only reaching around 12 degrees Celsius. Now through into Friday, it will be a much brighter day for all after a chilly start. We could still see some rain lingering across the east, particularly northeast England, and it's still going to be very blustery around eastern coasts. Brighter elsewhere, some showers at times, but it is going to feel much chillier for all. And as we head towards the weekend, the start of half term for many of us, a little bit brighter, still some occasional showers, but it's certainly going to remain feeling chilly.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Rotherham, on the M1 northbound, a broken down vehicle is affecting junction 31 with one lane closed, normalising by 6:42. In Nottinghamshire, the A52 eastbound is congested between the A6011 and A46, easing by 8:35. Milton Keynes, the A5 northbound collision between the A422 and A508, closing lanes until 8:38. On the trains, the Elizabeth line faces disruption between London Paddington, Heathrow or Reading. Great Western Railway services are also affected. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry, Dewbs & Co, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. The pollster academic and, of course, GB News presenter Matt Goodwin is alongside me, as is new face to the show, Lib Dem councillor Carl Cashman. Good evening, gents, and welcome back to each and every one of you. I've got to tell you, we've just been having a bit of a set-to there about the not-so-small boat crisis. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, she gave us a statement, says that the figures are shameful. The British people deserve better, and this government, she says, is taking action. We've detained and removed more than 35,000 people who are here illegally. And she says our historic deal with the French means that those arriving on small boats are now being sent back. But it's clear, she says, we must go further and faster, removing more of those here illegally and stopping migrants from making small boat crossings in the first place. I ain't got the heart to tell her that those 35,000, the majority of those went voluntarily. And as for that one in, one out farce, if you've only just tuned in, you will have missed the fact that one of the fellas got back on a not-so-small boat and came back again. Anyway, look, if it's not ridiculous enough here, let me take you live over to Ireland, because it really has all been kicking off over there. Dougie Beattie joins us more. Dougie, good evening to you. Bring my viewers up to speed with what has been happening.
Yes, well, I'm back in Northern Ireland because I have a Soldier F trial to cover in the morning. But last night now, we were in the Republic of Ireland in Dublin, in a place called City West, a hotel called City West, which was one of Ireland's top hotels. It was bought over by the government a few years ago and turned into an iPass centre. Now, earlier on in the week, there was a 10-year-old girl who was allegedly sexually assaulted. The man that appeared in court and was charged was also allegations that he comes from inside that iPass centre. And that sent already very, very touchy community in the Republic of Ireland over immigration right off the deep end last night, and there was running battles in the streets with the Garda Síochána, which is the Irish police, and protesters. And about 8 o'clock last night, that all kicked off when protesters marched, round about 1,000 of them, up towards the City West Hotel. The guards came out armed in riot gear, and bricks, bottles started raining in on them. And at that point, the Garda Síochána decided to deploy pepper spray, riot shields, and water cannon, as well as dogs and mounted horse into the crowds, which really didn't calm things any at all. Actually, Michelle, it made matters much, much worse, and we were caught up in that. In fact, the Garda, when we tried to get behind the police lines for our own safety, and we claimed that we were the media, but they could see we were the media, and they instantly pepper sprayed us, sending our camera personnel into a fence and then attacking me with a riot shield, forcing us back into the crowd again, and we're then having to go out with that crowd and run the gauntlet of more Garda at the top of the road. So really, it is a weekend of elections in the Republic of Ireland, presidential elections, of course, and the government are really trying to say there's nothing to see here. Even the mainstream media in the Republic of Ireland don't turn up at these protests, but they like to report on them using YouTube footage. And the reason we were there and so close was because you cannot report on something that you're not there. But tensions are very, very high in Ireland at this minute in time, and that's because the working class areas are now mainly full up, and those migrants that are coming in are actually now ending up in middle class areas and upper class areas, and that is really, really starting to push the boundaries in the Republic of Ireland.
And tell me about arrests that were made. I think there was about 6 or so arrests that happened yesterday.
Yes, there was 6 or 7 arrests, again for public disorder, that came in. I mean, at one point it was nearly laughable. Only in Ireland could you see this. The locals brought in horses and rid down the street, forcing the horses into the Garda's lines and splitting their lines. So there was quite a few arrests. Well, there was 5 arrests and charges brought against them. But that happened firstly in that charge, and then They went on down towards the Lewis, which is the Irish tram system, and real trouble broke out there. The police were trying to contain the rest of us in cul-de-sacs and so forth, but yes, there will be more arrests over the next few days, I am very, very sure.
Dougie Beattie, thank you very much for getting up close and personal to tell the viewers the truth of what actually goes on, because I know that these things are very often misrepresented. We do appreciate that, and of course we always want you to stay safe as well. This is, obviously live legal cases, so I can't get into the specifics of the allegations, but what a mess. I mean, this is just... Can you imagine being these parents when you're hearing rumours of children allegedly being sexually assaulted? I mean...
This is how societies collapse, and it's a dramatic statement, but this isn't only about the 10-year-old that is alleged to have been assaulted by an illegal migrant. This is about the 8-year-old in Lambeth, the 10-year-old who was very nearly kidnapped in Stockport, the 14-year-old in Epping, the 12-year-old in Nuneaton, the 12-year-old in Birmingham, the 27-year-old Rhiannon White, all of whom were allegedly raped, sexually assaulted, or in Rhiannon's case, allegedly murdered by illegal migrants, by people who should not have been in this country to begin with. So what we are witnessing in Western nations today are governments that are simultaneously allowing unvetted illegal migrants into our countries, putting them next to schools, next to families, while at the same time condemning, deriding, dismissing anybody who protests about this insane, extreme policy as being somehow beyond the pale, as if it's unacceptable to protest against the abuse and the assault that is happening, that is being imposed on our children by our own democratically elected politicians. This is how the social contract collapses, Michelle.
I don't even... I've got to tell you, I think the social contract was ripped up, stamped upon, spat upon a very long time ago in this country. What do you think to it all, Carl?
Well, I think, violence is never the answer, is it? But we talk about the social contract there. In order to preserve a social contract, we need to make sure that violence is never the answer. Although what I will say is the conversation on this does need to change, because at the moment, people who call this out or call the grooming gang scandal out or call anything else out are terrified of being labelled as either racist or fascist. And I think, there is an element of society that wants to stoke that, but there is also an element of society, very reasonable, fair-minded people that want answers to these fundamental questions. And for me, if we look at a Liverpool example, so there's a company, I don't know if you know them, called Serco, and essentially they buy up properties, or they bought up properties in Anfield, which is a traditionally white working class area. And what they've done is they've priced people out of housing. In some instances, it's meant that people have been evicted from their homes. And then they wonder why people get ate up and people get really frustrated about these issues. They are being conflated and they are being used to stoke division. But we need to have a real conversation about Serco and about other issues that are leading into this.
Let's have this conversation then after the break. Obviously, I have got to tell you, Serco are not here. Serco is just one company of many. And of course, what they will say is they are just fulfilling contracts that are being offered to them by successive governments in this country. You have very strong opinions on this matter. I know you do. Let's have that conversation then in 2. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everybody, Michelle Dewberry here with you till 7. I've got Cal Cashman and Matt Goodwin alongside me. Now, we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent. I like to do that because that is live television and we get to the heart of the matters that mean something to you. Serco and companies like that. I've got to be clear, these companies are not doing anything wrong. If they were here now, they would say that they are fulfilling contracts that have been doled out and dished out by successive governments. Let me start with you, actually, because you brought it up. There is an unrest within society now, that what is happening is that property is being bought up, often, by the way, by private landlords, issued to the likes of Serco. Other companies are doing the same thing on a HMO basis, inflated rents, fabulous financial incentives for those landlords. It is very problematic.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, I've got anecdotal evidence from areas of Liverpool where, you know, there's been private landlords that have been offered £900 for a property and they're currently renting it out for £700. So it becomes a no-brainer. And ultimately what you're doing is making these good landlords end up either renting out the property to Serco or renting out or taking that property, that's a good property, off the market as well. So you're reducing the supply, but you're not reducing the demand. So what's happening in these working class communities as well is rents are going up for normal working class people. And it's, you know, it's solving one problem and then creating another 5 further down the line.
But Carl, your position is completely inconsistent because the Liberal Democrats, were they to form a government, would oversee an explosion of immigration in this country, which would increase the demand you're now pointing to as being a problem in the housing market. I have not heard a single Lib Dem, and I'm happy for them to correct me on this, aggressively, vocally campaigning against Serco, who are using the British people's own money to outbid them in their own housing market, and our government is allowing this to happen. This is how absurd it really has become in this country.
Well, now you're hearing one, Matt.
Well, perhaps you should think whether you belong in the Lib Dems, because I've not heard your leader really come out and explain the glaring unfairness that is now pervading every aspect of British life. It really is absolutely insane.
I think, like, so you need to have lived and experienced these communities, don't you? So, you know, a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my colleagues around the country have seen this and agree with me that this needs to change. Now, our policy of setting up Nightingale centres to get legal migration under control would mean that those migrants that should be here can work, and the illegal migrants
and enter the housing market.
Yeah, but if they're working, Matt, they would be able to afford the housing.
Yeah, but sorry, you're missing the point. You're increasing demand. You're increasing mass migration. That is a Lib Dem policy. We are not building enough houses. We have built about 90,000 homes so far this year. Our net migration rate is somewhere close to 500,000 people before you get to the small boats, OK? So nobody in Westminster is making any sense on this anymore. It's very simple. You can have mass uncontrolled immigration, or you can have available, affordable housing. You cannot have both of those things. What we are doing is we are cutting adrift, we are betraying young British people, young British families, pushing them out of the housing market and prioritising people who are breaking our laws. That is how insane this country has become. The idea of the social contract is you prioritise tax-paying, law-abiding, hard-working citizens. Our government is doing the opposite. It is prioritising people who are breaking our laws, making no contribution to our economy, and who are often living on the welfare state rather than working.
I was going to let you come back in, but then I've just noticed the time, so you'll have to hold that thought and we can have that out another day. I've got to tell you again, Serco are not here to defend themselves. If they were here, they would say they're doing nothing wrong. I've got to tell you with my final thought, though, I think this whole HMO stuff, it is a monumental act of national self-harm, and it's not just this government that are doing it, it's previous governments as well. And I would beg any landlord, don't do this, because also I noticed that most of you are not doing it in your own community. Oh no, you're making the money, the top dollar, from doing it to someone else's communities. Please don't. That's all we've got time for, gents. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you to each and every one of you at home. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Storm Benjamin has been named by Meteo France, bringing a spell of wet and windy weather to us here in the UK, with some Met Office warnings issued for both wind and rain. Here's the storm here, slowly skirting its way into the southwest through the course of the evening, then moving its way eastwards through the course of the night. It's set to bring some very heavy downpours through Wednesday evening, all the way through into Thursday. This rain